I'm here to talk about leadership and why it's important, essentially, as well as try to bestow some of the deep wisdom and kind of tips and tricks as well that I've learned. Not all of the information is written down, so please pay attention. There will hopefully be a recording, which is not going to be scuffed. Okay, some things to be aware of before we start. Number one, I've tried to keep things kind of balanced because SKL focuses a lot on open platoons. So some of the stuff I've just kind of removed and added in a few things here and there to try to make it a bit more open platoon orientated. But it will be pretty general. Some of these things will be difficult to potentially understand, especially if you're kind of new to the game or if you haven't got a lot of experience leading. Okay, so please, at the end, utilize the Q&A section in case I don't explain anything too well. All right, let's start. So just a quick rundown on what we're doing, right? As you can see, there's a lot of stuff we're going to cover. Hopefully it should be between 20 to 30 minutes, no longer, and then 15-20 minutes of questions. I'm going to talk about who I am and why my opinion actually matters a little bit. Communication, right? Because without valid communication, your leadership, it will be bad. Okay, just straight up, it's going to be bad. So I'm also then going to move on to prioritize and execute and some decisiveness. Why leadership is the most important thing, right? And trust me, the leaders amongst you will really like that slide. The skill gap, time and space, right? No, I'm not the next crappy version of Doctor Who. Then we're going to talk about routes, and this is the one where I'll utilize in-game. We're going to scale up all the way to how these concepts work on the map, and then some tips and tricks for you guys to take away, quick summary, and as I promised, the Q&A section. So who am I? I am Dubnus. I've been leading 2 outfits now, one on Cobalt, one on Emerald, for over a year now. I've been the only FC for a North American team. Yes, I am British. Just ignore that. To win a Lane Smash tournament. FC BWAE's Gold Outfit Wars win in the first season of Outfit Wars. Led various teams. Done lots of work with the community. Force Commanded Community Smash 10. That was 550 people with 19 comms channels, which is why the communication slide is after this one. And I've also coached and mentored loads of different Lane Smash teams, outfits, etc. So, communication. Okay, here I'm going to try to give you some tips on how to communicate. And look, this isn't going to be a very comprehensive slide, right? You could do an entire presentation about communication alone. In fact, for a lot of these topics, I have got whole presentations for them, but I've tried to condense them and make them understandable. So here we go. So the first tip I have on communication is clap. Clear, loud, accurate, and with pauses. Okay. These are just little kind of tricks that you can do to essentially, right, get people to listen to you, right? So clear. We want to speak in a clear voice. If you have a good microphone, that helps. Loud. We want to speak loudly and confidently. Obviously, I'm not shouting right now, okay? And I'm not whispering, right? Just kind of speaking at a normal level, right? However, if there was 10 seconds to go to get to the point and we needed to breach a doorway, I would raise my voice, maybe a little bit, okay? Accurate and relevant pauses, right? Accurate and with pauses. So with the accuracy, we want to only give out relevant information, right? Brief and concise. Don't be afraid to take a second to think before you speak. Pauses. This can be your thinking time, right? Just take a pause. Breathe, okay? Lots of PLs, they sound kind of breathless because they're talking, saying all these different things, and they kind of just run out of breath, and then they will pause in a bad place to pause, right? So, you know, it might be going, oh, congratulations, we took the base, and then you're like, you know, you're screaming, you're shouting, then you need, 10 seconds to recover, but it's 10 seconds that people aren't doing anything, right? And we'll get on to concurrent activity in a moment. RSVP. Rhythm, speed, volume, and pitch, right? Have a consistent rhythm with regular pauses to help punctuate the key points, right? Speed. Don't go too quickly and don't go too slowly, right? Too slowly is boring. Too quickly, some people might not understand you, okay? Volume. Make sure you're easily audible and understandable, right? So if you're leading a public platoon, right, remember, people are going to have different volumes in game, and some of the newer players, well, they won't even understand how to change the audio, trust me, all right? So your side of your comm settings needs to be good to go. Pitch. You can use pitch and different kind of tones to essentially differentiate between kind of conversation, an order, a threat, right? So on and so forth, right? And that's hopefully pretty obvious. But again, if there are questions, put it in the Q&A no mic channel, and we'll get to it. So, number 3, right? You don't want to shout or insult or berate people, right? I've been compared to Gordon Ramsay. Over flattery, right? However, that's because sometimes I've shouted at people. I've also insulted people and berated them, right? But people sometimes will make mistakes, right? And most of the time, they don't know that why they made the mistake. They don't understand how it was a mistake, or simply they're too new to the game to realize what the hell is going on. Okay? So you need to help them understand what the mistake is, teach them a different way, and if they do it, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, okay, then maybe you can start to shout, right? Raise your voice a little bit, get a bit firmer with them. If a person isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing, right, as I say, it's up to you to communicate them in an effective manner. Now, as a British person, a lot of British people, they respond well to banter, right? However, the average person, on Emerald at least, doesn't seem to respond to that too well, right? So just be patient and work with them. Remember, if there's too little communication, things will go wrong because you're not giving enough guidance, right? And also, if communication is a two-way street, if there's no bottom-up communication, right, not just top-down, then you don't know what's going on as well, which means you can't help, right? However, if there's too much communication, for example, oh my god, I can't believe I died to that shotgun, it's not useful, is it? And things will go wrong because of it. So that's communication. I recommend using clap as much as you can, okay? Because overall, if you sound like you're in control, then even if you're not, it doesn't matter because, you can just kind of normal face it and be like, everything's good, let's continue with what we're doing. So prioritize and execute and decisiveness, okay? I see public platoons moving slowly, often, and new PLs multiple problems will arise while you're leading. And they'll get really flustered, right? Oh my God, we're losing this base, we're losing that base, we're losing this base. Or, there's an armor zerg on this lane, there's a sweaty tryhard outfit on this lane, there's a ghost cap on this lane, I've only got 4 squads. What am I going to do, right? Got to try to win this alert. So first of all, you have to prioritize, right? What's the biggest problem, right? And then you try to solve it, right? And even if you don't completely solve it, right, you gave it a try and then you can try to work on something else, right? When you're executing on stuff, right, if the execution is really critical, you have to do it yourself sometimes. That's just how it is. Especially in a public platoon, right? The PL and squad leaders, if you're going to try to steal a base, for example, you might have to be the ones to pull the galaxies to make sure your squad gets there. Okay, because it's really important that that happens. And decisiveness. Some people here may have heard the term default aggressive before. Essentially, what this means is, your default should be, okay, we're going to attack the problem, okay? However, you don't want to say to your, platoon from Quartz Ridge that you're going to foot Zerg into lowland trading post, right? Just because, it's default aggressive, let's go. That'd be dumb, right? Probably get some armor support, maybe some air assets, right? And do it that way, right? So there's a cheat code on decisiveness and wasting time, and it's called concurrent activity, right? For those here from BWAE who have been in my platoon, right, or my squad, they'll often hear me say the phrase, okay, good cap, right, well done, clear the enemy out of the base. Why I say this is while they're shooting things and staying busy, I'm looking at the map. I'm like, okay, did the thing I identify, 3-4 minutes ago, did that base flip? If so, how am I going to react to the new information I'm seeing on the map? Okay. Is the plan I had in my head, is that working? Or do I need to alter something? I'm doing all these kind of calculations kind of subconsciously, and then I'm deciding on what the best course of action is. The best squad leaders, they will do this in 5-10 seconds. People with less experience, they might take up to a minute, maybe 2 minutes, to be like, okay, this is the next base, put the waypoint down, this is where we're going, right? However, that's okay, it's almost acceptable as long as your platoon is busy, right? So you might have players getting galaxies ready at the warp gate, for example, when you start your platoon, right? This way, as people fill in, they get in the galaxy, just squad leaders can micromanage the squad classes, and this way, right, you can actually keep people occupied while you work out what the hell you're doing. So remember, a busy player is a quiet player, right? Most complaints in a platoon happen when people simply get bored, right? So, why leadership is the most important thing? So, first of all, quick definition on leadership, right? Simply, right, you're trying to have the influence of a leader, right, which then causes something or someone or a group of people, i.e. a group, to perform or do something, right, i.e. goal-directed behavior. For example, a platoon, right, might be standing around in a field doing nothing. You come along, you tell them, hey, let's go attack this base. Without you, the leader, that might not have happened. The platoon simply might have disbanded, okay? People may have left, got bored and left, right? But if you as the leader, a goal is implemented, you unify them around the goal, around your vision, and then stuff gets done, So a really cool quote here is, if not me, then who, right? Now, there's leadership in all aspects of life. And I often find that the people who at least I look up to, right, are always those who are great leaders. Military leaders, sure, right? But also civilian leaders, right? You know, famous leaders of communities or nations, right? And, you know, oftentimes these people will have books and everything else, you know, and they'll say, oh, the key to leadership is this, right? Or the key to leadership is that. Essentially, though, right, when we boil it down, you're providing an objective, okay? A vision. And in gaming, the objective of the leader, of you, is to enhance the experience of the game of the people you're leading, right? A solo player who joins a really good public platoon will have a better experience of the game. Someone who is in an outfit compared to not in an outfit, they are they're more likely to have a better experience of PlanetSide. Okay? And this is why leadership is so important. Because it makes the experience better, and if you have a good leader in real life, it makes your life better, right? It makes your life experience better. You know, if you've had a good boss at work versus a bad boss, the good boss makes you happy, the bad boss, not so much. And then I put a note here about utilizing the feedback cycle. Because leadership, as I kind of hinted at earlier on the communication side, it's not one way, right? You want to listen to other people, you know, when you're leading, so that you can learn from their mistakes. You can take all the good things, leave the bad things, and then become a better leader. Okay, the skill gap. So here you can see two teams, okay? The first team has 75% skill, but only 5% teamwork, okay? Giving them a total of 80%, you know, out of, let's say, just 100%, right? While the second team has 50% skill, but 30% teamwork, right? So what this means is it also gives them 80%. And so when these two teams fight, right, the fight will be decided on, you know, who makes mistakes and kind of other intangible factors, right, such as morale, okay? So here, skill plus teamwork equals ability, okay, or potential of success, right? And so, because that's what ability gives you, it gives you the potential to achieve things. So is there a third factor here? Or perhaps there's a component here which we haven't kind of identified in this theory. Simply, in teamwork, you don't necessarily need leaders. You can have a democracy. And well, of course, democracies work for perhaps politics. They don't always work when you're trying to lead a platoon, right? If you have 8 people in a platoon, or even just 4, discussing what to do next, that platoon is going to be slow, it's going to be boring, and someone's ego is going to get hurt because, haha, my idea is better than yours, right? So, in teamwork, you need leadership for the most part, right? However, for skill, you could also have leadership, right? Because how do people get better? Yeah, they can play the game, get more experience, or they can have a leader or someone who has the leadership tendencies as a coach to coach them through things, help them understand more, help them learn more, and thus improve their skill. And so a factor which is not controlled in this theory is leadership. And you could argue that leadership, as I'm arguing now, is the most important thing. Because without good leadership, your teamwork is going to be of a lesser quality. Without leadership, your skill is going to be of a lesser quality, and therefore your overall ability is going to be of a lesser quality. Okay? So not only as leaders is it our duty to enhance the experience of the people around us, but it's also our duty to try to make them better so they can win more, and hopefully if you're winning more, people will be happier. Okay? I can't think of many, if any, good leaders who lost everything, right? Because people, they want to win and they want to have fun doing it, right? Now, as a leader, you set the vision for what that win is, okay? For some people, it's zerging down the lane. For others, it might be getting a pop, an under-pop cap, right? And for others, it might simply be making a really cool construction base. Now, although that last one isn't for me, right, or the first one, you can see where I'm going with this. So moving on to time and space, okay? So it's really simple, this concept, okay? So bridging the skill gap was a theory, this time and space is a concept. And it has some roots in kind of real life strategy, okay? Bear with me, let me explain. So trading space for time and trade time for space, right? Often seen utilized in guerrilla warfare or insurgency strategies, okay? And if anyone's read the 33 Strategies of War, just for your reference, that's strategy 11, okay? So it's important to understand the effects of time and space on the map, right? Because it enables you to choose better fights, and it gives you more influence over what the enemy will do in order to, utilize what you're thinking here, right? You must first, right, try to give yourself either more time or more space, or hopefully both, right? So what is time? Well, time is how long it takes for the enemy to reach your objective. Now, if it's from one base to the next, right? Let's say it's a 1 point base, that means you've got 4 minutes cap time, right? Including the flipping time, right? It's 4 minutes, flipping of the point. Traveling time, let's say 60 seconds. So now you've got 5 minutes on the clock to defend the base, right? You can start to work out now how you can trade that time. So in this case, the time of the base, right? Not say the time of the alert, but the time of the base. And you can try to work out which space to take, which space to give up, buy yourself time, or buy yourself time by going straight for the point. So what I'm trying to say is trading space for time, or vice versa, is a basic fact of the game. Okay? And things like vehicles and force multipliers, they create space. Destroying enemy space will take time, and you have to take this time that it takes into consideration. Travel time, okay, is a big part of planet-side balance, okay? Whether it's in a building, a base, a lane smash, a region on the map, or even the whole map, travel time seriously matters, okay? So you've got 3 scales of how this concept applies. You've got the grand scale, which is essentially the whole map. The macro, which is like a lane smash or a region on the map. And then you've got the micro scale, which is simply one base. Okay. With the grand scale, The way to achieve space is to capture bases, right? Utilize armor and air and construction, right, to help you do this, right? The way to achieve time is, say, through backcapping, delaying active caps, as well as the time, right, it takes the enemy to traverse through the space you have created, right? So let's say the enemy are trying to capture the palisade and you've backcapped them on Briggs Labs, right? Well, let's say they spawn in at J908 impact, they pull a galaxy, and then they send a squad to kill, say, your half squad that you've put there. That, all in all, that will take about a minute, at least nowadays, without the quick pulling, okay? So you see how you're buying yourself time, plus add on the time that you've put on the back cap. Now you've went from 1 minute to maybe 2 minutes. That gives you 2 more minutes to defend the palisade. Hopefully you guys are understanding what I'm saying here. I don't always explain this very well. So please, for the Q&A, any questions, please let me know. So by utilizing time and space effectively, the leader should be able to more accurately predict enemy movements, timings, as well as which fights they may, face a certain enemy composition, right? Between indirects and Quartz Ridge, we should always expect armor, then infantry, okay? Very rarely do we expect any kind of air force because of the open sight lines surrounding the lane, okay? So we're also kind of thinking about the terrain here as well. So the macro scale, as I mentioned earlier, basically is just a scaled down version of of what space and what time you're trying to control, right? As a PL, you may often just want to fight one faction, right? Let other people, other outfits deal with, the other, okay? And so that's when you're playing on the macro scale. When you're playing on the ground scale, you're playing the whole map, okay? Then when you're a squad leader, or even sometimes as a PL, you'll focus on just one base, and in which case, that's the micro. And it's all the same, right? Backcapping, delaying generator flips, delaying the point, so on and so forth. Okay, and we'll be talking about static point holding and River D point holding, and you will then see time and space applied more clearly on kind of the infantry level, right? The more of the micro scale on the base subject. So I'm going to switch to in-game now to explain slide 9, which is routes. While I'm doing this, please make sure you write down any questions. Please give me some time to load my game because my PC is bad. So while we wait for the game to load, I'll try to explain. You have 3 different types of routes, or 5, but basically spawn routes and key rotation routes. They interact and basically are contained within air, vehicle, and infantry routes. Okay. And on the map, right, instead of just having kind of the air, vehicle, and infantry, you've also got platoon movements and how platoons basically you would expect them to move on the map, right, where you expect them to pull armor, so on and so forth. Okay. Okay. And so when it comes to routes, right, I'm just going to try to show you at the most kind of obvious of bases because I'm aware time is starting to get a little bit long. So we're going to use an obvious base, one that you've all probably played at before, and that is going to be, let's do Indar Array. Indar Array is a really interesting base in terms of how combined arms should work and how rarely they actually do. So mainly because people don't bring enough combined arms, right? So I'm going to switch over to the game. Please let me know if you can't see it. Okay, that should be now showing my game, hopefully. Okay, let's go. So, Indar Array and routes. If only a few people have heard this before. Only people who I've tried to train up as force commanders will have heard this before. So, treating you guys to pretty much my secrets. So, routes. Let's start off with air and vehicle. Okay, so air, it's pretty obvious, right? You might be like, oh, Dubnus, the air can come from anywhere, which is true. It can, right? Air operates in a 360-degree ability to attack a base. That is true. However, we can expect certain obvious pathings, right? For example, from J908 impact site, from Dahaka amp station, and from indirects, right? These places are, places we can kind of expect aircraft to come from. And then looking at other places, right? We have the Crown, and some Biolab, and have our data bank, right? And so now, instead of looking at 360 degrees, right? Let's say we're the NC, right? We're now only looking at indirects, Dahaka amp, and J908 impact, right? So now we went from, say, looking at 360, we're now looking at perhaps 180, or a little bit more if you want to include the Crown. So that's your air route. Super simple stuff. There's more, you can expand more into air strategy, but for the sake of time, I will not. Vehicle. Okay, so here, vehicles are most likely going to come from the road, right? All the different roads, as well as anvils, right? We have to remember they're in the game now as well. And also, don't forget there are places where you might not think vehicles can drive up. For example, there's various places actually at Indar Array, such as here, where vehicles can actually drive up the hill, and then you can literally drive past the spawn room and create all types of mayhem. Okay. However, the most important thing for PL, right? Because that's, those two things are kind of obvious. I'm just kind of labeling them. The next bit, however, is not as obvious. We're going to look at routes on a micro scale. Now, the key infantry route here at this base is that. Let me show you why it is that. So here we can access the point, right, whilst being in cover from the spawn room. Okay. Now for this key infantry route is all to do with the point, okay, and how you can exert influence over the point. And then the route takes us up the staircase, through the open room upstairs, to the balcony. And again, because this base is somewhat unique, we can flip the point from the balcony. And that gives us our key infantry rotation route. Okay. So now you may be thinking, okay, that's great. Appreciate it. How does this interact, say, with spawn routes? So I'm going to use a different color here. I'll use pink. Try to be as colorblind friendly as possible. So here we have 3 spawn routes. Okay, those are your 3 spawn routes. Now, can you see how the key infantry route interacts with that spawn route? Okay, we can contest them all along the point area. We can contest them as they try to push up, right? All along this point area, we can contest them as long as we have control of this kind of, you know, half cube thing, half square, right? Or 3/4 of the square, right? We can contest them. Okay. Now, if we put, say, the enemy, right, on, say, balcony, we can rotate, we can kill them. If we put them on the roof, we can rotate and we can kill them. If they are actually contesting the route itself, that's when we're in a whole lot of bother. And I guarantee that most people will have never seen Indoor be capped without this route being controlled. Now, there's some exceptions and some technicalities to that. Oh, you know, last second steal, you know, or, you know, we just collapse the point for the last 10 seconds. And so that way we, you know, you're wrong. Well, I bet for the last 10 seconds before that, you were probably somewhere inside this route. So that's the spawn routes and the key rotation routes. Okay. And essentially along the entire map, right, we have these routes at every single base, including sometimes, you know, these vehicle bases, right? However, right, bad base design is when the routes are crap. For example, let's look at Chimney Rock here. The point is located in this 4 square. The route is simply a dot. That is your key infantry rotation route at Chimney Rock, because it's a crap base. And most bases which are crap, you will have a bad rotation route. The reason why it's here, by the way, is it's the most protected part of the point building, and have infantry anywhere else equals death, normally to vehicles and the like. So how do we then tie time and space into these routes? Well, as we can see, right, we want to keep them away from our key infantry route. So if we have, say, I don't know, let's have a Bulldog Sunderer here, right? And then we have another Bulldog Sunderer here. And then we have infantry inside the double stack. Well, all of a sudden, right, what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to try to push through all of this stuff. And what that gives you is time, and you've also created space, because instead of just holding the triple stack at the point, you're now holding the flanks, you're holding the double stack. And that is all space you can sacrifice for more time. Okay. With that being said, we're going to talk about kind of the point holding concepts, right, on slide 10. So let me go back over to the Google Slides. Hopefully my computer won't crash while we're doing this. So there we go. Right. Slide 10. Point holding concepts. So I've provided here 2 very basic things. And let me talk through them, help you understand, hopefully, although they are somewhat self-explanatory. So my basic battle plan for point holding, you set up on the point, right, or on the base as a whole. You then contact, and you either wait for contact, or you can actually pin the enemy right? Going back to ind.conray, in the spawn room, for example, using the double stack. You can have advance or you can have attrition, right? If you're advancing, that means you're normally trying to pin the enemy somewhere away from the point building or away from the point. If you're fighting a battle of attrition, that means you're normally just staying inside that point building or indeed that point room and hoping you can survive the onslaught of whatever gets thrown at you. And lastly, you collapse the point if you need to. Okay, so what's static point holding? Well, static point holding is when you hold certain choke points in a building, and it's always in the point building, right? Which allows for your people, right, your people in your platoon or your squad to have a shorter rotation time. Again, going back to that key infantry route we were talking about, that rotation route, we're lowering the time it takes to rotate, but it allows for enemies to stack up and concentrate their forces around the building, okay? So the key is to create local superiority for you, right? So if you're not careful, if you get surrounded with, say, 3 minutes left on the clock, you're going to have a problem. I'll explain how you can counter that in the next slide. River D point holding is simply where you push out, often creating a spawn lock, and essentially it means the enemy has to fight their way to the point room, okay? Which means you're trading space for time. Again, the time here being related to the base cap timer, okay? However, there's a weakness here. Inexperienced or kind of weaker players, they might just get absolutely blasted while trying to fall back to the point building on the point room. And also, if you let's say you're trying this with just one squad, well, the enemy might drop a squad on the point building and outflank you, right? So often it's good, say if you're in a platoon, one squad holding the point statically, two squads, for example, trying to do the spawn lock, and then another squad can be elsewhere, setting up the map for your next play, okay? So for breaking point holds, okay, it's actually kind of simple, right? Some people, they like to overcomplicate things when trying to break a point hold. There's no need. Please follow my formula, okay? First of all, you isolate the point or the point building, okay? So going back to that Chimney Rock example, why was that such a bad base? Because it's so easy to isolate the point, okay? And then we want to degrade the enemy, okay? What I mean by that is you want to degrade their capabilities and their sustainability, okay? Capabilities being how much hurt they can do to you. Sustainability is how much hurt they can take, how much hurt they can recover from, right? For example, example of sustainability, number one, how many medics they have. Number two, how many res grenades they have. And number three, how much overall utility they have, right? And then you want to kind of degrade that. So killing medics, right? Not letting the enemy place spawn beacons, making them waste res grenades, right? With kind of dry pushes. What I mean by dry pushes is where you just push in, you die, you probably get wiped, but you make them use a load of utility and a load of resources, while all you're doing is using time instead of, say, 10,000 nanites trying to breach with proper conks, etc. Once you've done that dry run, you can then do your proper run, your proper breach, which will destroy the point hold because you're using capabilities which they now no longer have, okay? Or you've bought yourself enough time to bring up a force multiplier, right? Such as a bulldog bus, air to ground, maxes, so on and so forth. Now, a key note here, guys, is that you don't always have to go through this process. For example, BWAE or gobs or recursion, sometimes they'll drop on a base, and instead of bothering to isolate the building, they'll simply or degrade the enemy's capabilities inside, They'll just drop the point, go in, kill everything, and leave. Now, why is that possible? Well, it goes back to the skill gap, right? If the teamwork with the point holders isn't there, then one of those outfits could easily do that. Just turn up, wipe them, and leave, right? Never mind to say, the obvious, perhaps, disparity in skill as well, right? Can't forget about that part. So you can sometimes just go to number 3, clear the point first, and then you can work on repairing vehicle generators, clearing out the enemy spawns, so on and so forth. Okay, so you don't always have to do this step, but if you're struggling, it's a good thing to fall back onto while you try to think of something else. Okay, right, let's try to go to the ideal point hold. We are kind of pressed for time, so I'm not going to play this video, but essentially it's from a lane smash practice, which I did a couple years ago, and it's in the Amarish Ark's cave, and essentially your perfect point hold has good sustainability, well-managed rotations, and you want to be proactive, and you want to be dynamic, right? So what would this look like on live? Really simple. Let's take, we'll take in.com. We'll keep using that base, right? So first of all, for the first 2 minutes of the cap, let's say, you've got 2 squads inside that forward double stack and around the area. You've got 1 squad on point, and then you've got 1 squad on the triple stack. Okay. However, with 2 minutes left on the base timer, your forward 2 squads, they're getting hurt real bad. So you order them back, right? Now let's say you have 3 squads in and around the triple stack and 1 squad on point. Okay. The reason why you bring those 2 squads back to the triple is so you can protect that key infantry route, right? You want to try to control momentum. Okay. Control the momentum of what's happening. So then, right, as you're fighting, right, you can maybe do little pushes, right? So maybe you try to push in the left flank, or you try pushing the right flank. Try to destroy the enemy as they're building up for a big push. And as I'm sure many of you have experienced before, right, at in.com, when you're trying to defend it, someone will normally orbital strike the double stack or the spawn room. Now, what they don't realize is the kind of subconscious reason for this is to break up the enemy forces and to stop them from being in a position to where they reach critical mass and therefore being able to breach your point hold, right? So another example, right, Scarfield Reliquary, if there's an enemy squad drop on door 1, right, and you have 2 squads which can go deal with it, send them, kill that squad, come back inside. You've just taken 12 people out out the game, and now you're in a much better position than you were, say, 15 seconds ago. Okay, so scaling it up. Trading space for time or vice versa, right? Look, on the micro scale, the base timer dictates the time. On the grand scale, right, the alert timer dictates it. Or on the regional scale, right, or the macro scale, the timer of, say, the lane smash match dictates how much time you have, okay? Combined with, of course, the base timer, right? Because you always need to think about how much time, theoretically, you could capture, how many bases you could capture in X amount of time. Look, if you have an excess of time, choose which space to fight for or not to fight for. If you have excess of space, choose when or what time to contest, okay? On the right, we've got an image taken from the other night on Emerald. And look, straight away, no matter what you do as an NC platoon commander or leader, you've lost this alert. There's simply not enough time to capture enough territory to a point, even if TR started to double team them, to a point where the VS would lose. Okay? However, let's ignore the alert timer and say this is what happens, what the map looks like when the alert has just started. Okay? So, you have multiple issues going on at the same time. Number one, the TR have you've got a massive fight. Can you guys see my cursor? Should be able to, I think. So you've got a massive fight at Indorex. You've kind of got a fight going on between Indocom and as a broadcast hub, and then you've got a base here, as a Botany. You're taking it slowly. You know, that looks like 40 seconds left on the timer. But you've also got Paris being captured. Okay. So you, as a platoon leader, you've got loads of issues to deal with. Now, my first move here would actually to let Paris go. Look, there's 1 minute and 4 seconds to go. I've only just logged in. I've only just created the platoon. Or the alerts only just started. We're not going to be able to save it. Okay. So I'd send 2 squads to Indar Comare, right? And then say 2 squads elsewhere to the VS front, ignoring Paris. However, if we're using a public platoon, splitting up squads is really, really difficult. Okay? And so instead, right, I'd probably form up at Vanu Archives, trying to take Snake Ravine, and then try to pressure Xenotech Labs, and then down into the vehicle base. I think that's Burgess Overlook, right? And then perhaps in Escard Mesa. And so that would be the lane I'd fight on. Okay, those 4 bases, I'd kind of ignore the rest of the map for like 30 minutes while I try to stabilize the NCVS front. And then, you know, if we kind of hit a roadblock or we get messed up too much, stop, think, reevaluate, move on. Or continue if you think of a better way to do it. And so what we're trading here in terms of space, we're trading Paris. We're also perhaps trading lowland trading post, right? And then, you know, when we're talking about map play, we've got to think about pressure points or choke points. These are bases you don't want to lose. Allerton Biolab, Quartzridge Camp, Vanu Archives, right? And it would be Paris Amp, but you've already lost it. So that's why that doesn't qualify. Right? So then you can kind of form a strategy off these bases and you're good to go. So, tips and tricks. How do you lead a platoon? 1, something happens, it triggers a response from you. Your next 2 steps are to communicate both down to people and people communicating up to you, right? Then you communicate whatever your plan is. That you explain, you know, how you're going to adapt, and then you execute. Okay. Listen, complacency leads to failure. Okay. Most people will know this, right? Indeed, people in BWAE, right, get complacent. Kind of, oh, maybe I won't, you know, place that spawn beacon, or maybe I won't set up that Sunderer, and we'll be good to go, right? We just, you know, kind of just rely on skill, and then get wiped, and then kind of go, oh, damn, you know, that was just unlucky. No, most of the time it's complacency. Okay. When you're a leader, you need to be as knowledgeable about as much as you can be. Now, I don't know every base layout in the game. Okay? Don't remember them all. Especially not the OSHA bases. However, for the other 4 continents, I know most of the common bases. right? I can kind of explain the layouts, right? How many points they have, where they are, so on and so forth, just from memory, right? Been playing the game for about 2 years, right? There are people who've been playing this game for 10 years, or whatever, how long it's been out, and they don't even know the base layout, right? So don't be one of those people, right? Understand the game as well, right? You need to be able to, sometimes lead from the front, which means you've got to be able to kill things, which means, sometimes, right, when I'm breaching a point hold or breaching a building and my squad is sitting outside being cowardly, I'll run in, I'll kill 2, 3, and back in the day maybe 4 or 5, I'd be like, and I'll be calling this out, right? I'll be like, come on guys, look, push, killed 2, killed 3, killed 4, and I'd be calling this out, and then when I die, I'd be like, I've just killed 4 people, where is everyone else, right? And this way you're kind of goading them into moving, right? The reason why you can utilize some goading there is because, and some, somewhat bad comms, is because, hey, if your squad stays outside, you're going to lose. You're either all going to die, or you're going to lose the base, and then you're going to die. So you have to bear that in mind, that, being better at the game puts you in a position to use kind of other leadership tools. So when you get to a base, right, remember to position your squads with combined arms in mind, okay? Don't do what I do and designate a suicide squad for Sierra listing post on the vehicle base, the vehicle point, on the A point, right? And say, hey guys, and by the way, this is normally my squad. I'll say, hey guys, we're going to sit on this point in an open field and hope we don't die as infantry. Spoiler alert, we die every time, okay? So you've got to remember, combined arms, you can use them yourself, but so can the enemy. Okay, you want to inspire other people, right? Using a shared goal, whether it's winning an alert, making your outfit the best outfit on Emerald, or simply trying to recruit some more people. Use it to inspire, okay? Use it to enhance people's gaming experience. Make sure people understand what they're doing and why, right? So communicate clearly. Communicate the intent. And what's that intent? Well, it's a shared goal, okay? Be confident, but try not to be too arrogant. I've made that mistake. Doesn't end well. People get hurt. Not physically, just ego. But, then you have to kind of fix the fence or burn the bridge, and it all gets a bit messy. Remember, no one is below you just because you decide to be the leader, right? Because anyone technically can lead a platoon. Anyone can technically lead a squad. Don't get me wrong, there's some people who definitely shouldn't, but people can, and therefore you've got to realize that, hey, listen, other people want to try to provide other unique experiences to the game, right? Try to remember that. You're not necessarily special just because you're like, I have a gold star next to my name. Try to be decisive, okay? As I mentioned earlier, right? Concurrent activity while you're figuring things out, and then move, attack something, or defend it, right? Try to keep stuff simple, especially in an open platoon, right? Don't get really wild or crazy. But if you're leading kind of like, say, more experienced, more skillful people, you can get a little bit more crazy. And lastly, lead by example. Okay, so summary. Let's get after. As the leader, you're responsible for everything, okay? I don't care if my Charlie squad lead fails to get a galaxy. That's my fault for not making sure that they had a galaxy ready to go. For making sure that they heard me, right? If I'm in a squad and I'm leading the squad and we get wiped because someone doesn't place a spawn beacon or throw a res grenade, you know what, that's my fault. Perhaps I could have changed something, rotated a different way, right? Placed the spawn beacon myself, okay? It's always your fault as a leader, which means kind of have to take the ego hit whenever you fail, right? And when you win, guess what? You're not responsible for that. The team is, okay? Because the team executed. All you did was provide the vision and the leadership to make it happen, okay? As I mentioned earlier, leadership creates a better teamwork environment, and it provides basically more opportunity to bridge the skill gap, so achieving more. Trade space for time and trade time for space. This concept is basically how the game works on a leadership level. Remember the air, vehicle and infantry routes, as well as the key rotation route and the spawn routes, okay? They exist at every base. Use them. Remember, point holding can also be reduced to the concept of space and time, combined with routes, right? How these interact. The ideal point hold is dynamic. It minimizes the enemy's effectiveness and maximizes the sustainability of the friendly force. And lastly, if nothing else from this presentation, try never to stop striving to improve or to stop learning, whether it's in leadership or in real life or something, you know, whatever you're doing, right? Try to learn more, try to improve in whatever you're doing. And as you can see in the speaker notes, there's a couple more presentations. And then what I would recommend, if you're seriously interested in leadership, reach out to me, DM me on Discord. I will provide even more resources should you wish for them. With that being said, there's also a video on how to take AKA Southern Labs. I don't mention routes here. I don't mention time and space, but what you can do is think about how those actually apply to the video, and it will all make sense. Okay, with that being said, let's go for some questions, I think. Let's have a look here. Okay. Do we have any questions? Let's have a look. So you can write them out in hashtag no mic. Just write out the question and I'll answer it once you've done it. And then if okay. So mentalities question. How does a leader get people motivated, having fun, doing something they may not prefer to do? So you want to kind of balance this, right? So let's say, you know, I need to take a BWAE I need to take 2 BWAE squads, or 3 or 4, and zerg a lane, contrary to popular belief. We don't like that. We don't have fun doing it. Well, I explain to them the intent. Okay, why am I asking someone to do something they don't really want to do? Well, it's all to do with the intent. So in that example I gave about zerging the lane, it's so I can shift the map, right? And by shifting the map, I can create better fights to a point where no longer need to zerg. When I explain this to people, when I explain the intent, we're good to go. Okay, Kazdar's question. How does a leader gauge and manage the morale of a platoon properly? What should you do when the mood is starting to dip? Okay. So, gauging the morale of a platoon. If it's an open platoon, it's seriously difficult to do. Okay? Because most of the time in open platoon, people aren't speaking. They're not communicating with you. So you don't know if there's a morale problem or what, right? But let's assume right, that we have no communications. It's just the squad leaders and the PLs talking, right? Well, one indication could be someone who was following you guys, your guys' leadership, right? The squad leads and the PL. Maybe they've been following for like the last 30 minutes pretty religiously, and then all of a sudden they're at another base doing something else. In this example, right, they're probably unhappy or they're probably bored, which means in terms of the management of that, either the SL or the PL or whoever is in charge needs to explain why you're doing what you're doing, and that, hey, listen, we need you here at this base because we need your help, okay? When the mood's starting to dip, if you've already kind of explained the intent, people are getting frustrated and upset because maybe you're losing the alert, right? And you're like, okay, cool, we're losing the alert. Or, worst case scenario, we've already lost the alert and people are blaming each other. Hear this on command chat all the time. Blame, blame, blame. Well, in your platoon, right, what we need to do, okay, is simply shift the goalposts a little, or give them an objective where we can kind of get some more, gratification, right? So if we've already lost the alert, let's play for some better fights. If we've had 3 tough losses in a row, let's go get us a guaranteed win by Zerg in the lane. Okay. Little things like this. At the end of the day, right, sometimes the mood can't be recovered. But if it's gotten to that point, something else has happened other than simply them losing motivation. Okay. Kura's question. What are some tips to break up a major Zerg? Okay, so the map play, very simple. Let me we'll go back to this map, right? Let's say for the question, right, Paris Amp Station has 96 plus Vanu, okay? You've got SKL, VCATS, VSTD, and R18 all at Paris Amp Station. That's a lot of people, okay? How do we break up that Zerg? Well, we want to pressure what lattices we can. So, attacking Alatum Botany Wing, which is a southeast satellite of Alatum. Attacking Snake Ravine, which is the base that is connected to Vanu Archives, right? We start attacking them, right? 2 squads at each base, and then, whichever base needs reinforcements, we move them, bouncing them between the 2 lanes. Eventually, it would probably most likely take Snake Ravine and Botany, and then, you could send 1 squad to Ceres and then 3 to Snake Ravine, and then you bring in that 4th squad at the last minute to provide extra resonades and extra reinforcements on point. And so when you're trying to break up a big Zerg, you want to try to cut them off, or you want to spread them out on the map. Okay, so going back to the questions, Frederick asks, do you have any advice for training players in non-leadership matters? For example, if you were giving a training to a platoon on a lane opener or community smash opener. Yeah, dry run your setups. For anyone here who played with Pray for Help, or whatever the team after that was called, or if you've had experience with me in Lane Smash, you'll know I love to drill the opener or do a lane walkthrough. Okay, and that way you can educate people on it, and then once you've, say, practiced the setting up a point hold, you can then split into 2 teams. 1 team practices point holding, 1 team practices breaking it, and then vice versa. And you could do this up and down the lane, or for community smash, You just make sure you know what your kind of area of operations would be. Okay. Do we have any more questions, please? I know we've covered a lot. People are probably a little bit tired. But if there aren't any more questions, give you guys a couple more minutes to write them out. And then we'll be looking to wrap up here pretty soon. What do I do when I'm the one feeling down or upset in a situation as a squad lead or PL? It's a really good question. That actually happened a few weeks ago. Feeling pretty burnt out on plant side. Okay. Just hated playing. And it was like walking over like Lego and broken bits of glass just to even log in. Okay. And when you're leading, that attitude, no matter how much you try to hide it, most of the time, for most people, it's going to leak out. And you might snap at someone, or you might lose a base, and you might say out loud to the platoon, accidentally. You might just say, why even, bloody bother, right? So when that happens, right, in the situation a couple of weeks ago, someone else logged in who could lead the squad, and I said, hey, listen, I gave it my best shot. It's been 30, 45 minutes. I just hate the game tonight. I just can't play it. I can't lead the squad. You're going to have to do it because I am not enhancing the experience of my squad. So that's quite an extreme example of kind of just passing over leadership, okay? Because most of the time, some people, they might not recognize they're upset or feeling down or they're angry. They might not actually recognize that. And so the first step is actually to recognize it and then try to think of a solution, right? The end solution is giving up the leadership role to someone else, or kind of the middle ground between that is kind of taking a break, right? So go overpop a fight for 3 minutes, try to calm down, right? Try to clear your head, detach a little bit, work out what you're going to do next. Trying to think of something which will be fun not only for the people you're leading, but also the people, but also for yourself. So that's a really good question, and it's quite tough. But at the end of the day, you got to recognize it, and then sometimes you just got to hand over the reins if you're in a real bad spot. I ignore its existence, Shades. I'm not going to read out the question because it's irrelevant. No problem. Okay, people have a minute or two to write out questions. If there's no questions within the next minute or two, we'll stop. Often I see fellow leads not understanding what they as a platoon need to be taking or holding, and where and why. If you have before, what is the best way to teach others map meta? Teaching other people map meta. First of all, do they want to be taught your perception of map meta? Do they want to be told how you think their map should be played, or how your vision of the map works. If they do, and both sides put away the ego, maybe there's a discussion there to be had. Most of the time, this will not happen over, say, command chat, but would most likely be more successful in a private conversation in, say, Discord DMs, right? Or even better, a Discord call, right, where you could talk to one another rather than typing stuff out, because sometimes when you type things out, you know, sarcasm or whatever gets lost, so on and so forth. Okay, how do you deal with other platoon leaders from command who are not wanting to help with objectives? It's not your duty to lead the whole faction, okay? Not unless you're playing Community Smash, okay? You can only control the people who you're friendly with or who you're working with in that moment, okay? Including, say, joint ops, right? You can't say, hey, you know, I need Winter Gaming to attack this base if you're some random PL who they've never heard of, right? So as a leader, right, what you want to do is you want to try to create some rapport between yourself and others, right? And then once you build up rapport, maybe then you can start to speak with people about how to win alerts or set up a good fight. But most of the time, someone else's platoon simply isn't your business on live. What's the strategy for enhancing the player experience as PL when your faction is under heavy 2v1? Try to reset. What I mean by reset is try to reset a lane. So if if one faction hits a 3-point base or a large facility or base you can hold easily, try to let them attack it, defeat them, backcap them, and then push off that way. Because even if you're under heavy 2v1, you will be able to win small fights. Okay. And then you can kind of scale up into bigger fights. You know, you get those little wins, you take what you can, and then you try to get a big win later on down the road. When is it appropriate to decide as a lead to warp gate a faction? Would you consider warp gating a strategic move, or is it a bad practice? Normally a bad. Okay, if you want to win an alert, warp gating the enemy is normally a failure. It's normally a bad thing. I know from Community Smash. Okay, never mind. You know, all the times I've warp gated TR and C. Normally a bad move strategically. Okay. However, if your objective is to get good fights and the enemy are not providing you with those fights, well, you have to move the map. The best way to get fights is by attacking the warp gate. You will always have a fight at a warp gate base. Okay, I think that's all the questions. I've got a 60-second timer for people to type things out. No, that's an irrelevant question. I'm not for such questions. You need to speak with Madman. Shades. Okay, looks like we're done here. Thank you everyone for coming along, and if there's anything else that I can help, just drop me a DM, okay? And I wish you all the best of luck with leading, and if you're frustrated with the game, keep trying at it if you're finding it fun in small doses, and, you know, try not to get burnt out. Cool. Thanks everyone.